Hello, our listeners. Welcome on our channel. On our video today, we are going to look at the novel, An Artist of the Floating World. We are going to summarize the whole story, flow of events, from the beginning to the end. Before we do that, kindly subscribe to our channel, like this video, and turn on notification. Thank you so much. Now guys, let us dive in. An Artist of the Floating World tells the story of a former artist named Masuji Ono. Ono is both protagonist and narrator, and he provides a highly subjective account of the events that shaped his career, family life, and reputation, grappling with his past as he tells his story. Though the narrative leaps in and out of different periods in Ono's life, from his first job to his childhood to his role working for the government in World War II-era Japan, the strongest linear thread revolves around the marriage of Ono's daughter. In the years after the war, Ono works to negotiate a traditional arranged marriage for his younger daughter, Noriko. In light of a failed marriage negotiation for Noriko a year before, in which the groom's family mysteriously pulled out at the last minute, Ono's older daughter, Setsuko, suggests that he visit various old acquaintances. This way, he can ensure that if these acquaintances are interviewed about Ono and his family as part of the negotiation, they will provide positive testimony. Ono believes that Setsuko is politely telling him to find a way to make his past less of a problem, since his career before and during the war has destroyed his reputation. The exact nature of that career occupies much of the space in the novel. Ono lays the groundwork by talking about his father, who destroyed his early paintings to prevent his son from becoming an artist and to force him instead to join the family business. Yet Ono chose to pursue his passion and describes his first job in a factory-like studio, followed by a second, more prestigious phase of his career, working under an artist named Moriyama. Moriyama's students lived together in a rundown villa, mimicking their teacher's style, which emphasized aesthetics and technique, and sought to portray the floating world of the city's nighttime revelry. While becoming one of Moriyama's favorite students, Ono was also pulled away from him through his encounter with a man named Chishu Matsuda. Matsuda, who believed that artists should engage with politics more, encouraged Ono to explore the world outside of Moriyama's villa. He also took Ono to poor parts of town that Ono had never visited. This ignited a political awakening in Ono, who created several explicitly political paintings. When Moriyama discovered these, he refused to mentor Ono any longer. However, the novel tells us in bits and pieces about Ono's rise to success, creating art that celebrated the new spirit of Japan. These works were nationalistic and portrayed military might. At the start of the war, Ono gained power working for a committee that censored unpatriotic art. He even reported on his own favorite student, Kuroda, causing Kuroda to detest his old teacher so deeply that he refuses to meet with him years later during Noriko's marriage negotiations. In one flashback scene, Ono watches policemen burn Kuroda's art, in an act that parallels Ono's father's burning of Ono's paintings. However, Ono's rise to power was cut short, since Japan lost the war, and American troops subsequently occupied the country. It is from this period that Ono narrates. At the time of narration, he feels bitter towards the younger, more Americanized generation. He suspects that this generation hates his own generation for bringing about the war. He feels guilty not only for betraying Kuroda, but for the premature deaths of his wife Michiko and his son Kenji, both of which occurred during the war. At the end of the novel, Noriko has been successfully wed to a reputable man named Taro Saito. Setsuko tells her father that he has nothing to feel guilty about, since his paintings were well-liked, but certainly not influential enough to cause harm. This is a difficult realization for Ono, since he feels genuine guilt for some of his actions, and since he would rather have a bad reputation than none at all. However, he begins to feel more fulfilled little by little after this conversation. When Matsuda, who has remained a friend, dies, he reacts calmly and without guilt. He recognizes features of the floating world in the manners of the young businessmen he once resented, and he focuses his energy on his beloved grandson, Ikiro. In the build-up to World War II, Ono, a promising artist, breaks away from the teaching of his master, whose artistic aim was to reach an aesthetic ideal in representations of the floating world of nighttime entertainments. Ono becomes involved in far-right politics and begins making propagandistic art. Later, as a member of the Cultural Committee of the Interior Department and official advisor to the Committee of Unpatriotic Activities, Ono becomes a police informer, taking an active part in an ideological witch hunt against a former student, Kuroda. After the 1945 defeat and the collapse of Imperial Japan, Ono becomes a discredited figure, one of the traitors who led the country astray. Meanwhile, the victims of state repression, including people Ono himself had once denounced, are reinstated and allowed to lead a normal life. Over the course of the novel, Ono seems to show a growing acknowledgement of his past errors, although this acknowledgement is never explicitly stated, and his narration is marked by declarations of uncertainty in his memory of past events and a high degree of unreliability. The book is written in the first person and hinges on the exclusive use of a single, unreliable narrator, expressing a viewpoint which the reader identifies as limited and fallible, without any other voice or point of view acting as a test. Ono often makes it clear that he is not sure of the accuracy of his narrative, but this may either make the reader cautious or, on the contrary, suggest that Ono is very honest and, therefore, trustworthy. The self-image Ono expresses in his narrative is vastly different from the image of him the reader builds from reading the same narrative. Ono often quotes others as expressing admiration and indebtedness to him. Ono's narrative is characterized by denial, so that his interests and his hierarchy of values are at odds with the readers. Readers, therefore, find that what they are interested in is not the focus of Ono's narrative, but at its fringes, presented in an oblique rather than direct fashion. For example, Ono's descriptions of his pictures focus on pictorial technique, mentioning the subjects as if they were unimportant, although they reveal the propagandistic nature of his work. It is not entirely clear whether this focus on style rather than substance should be ascribed to Ono as narrator, showing his retrospective unconscious embarrassment, or if it was already present in him at the time he was making the pictures, showing that totalitarianism exploits people's capacity to restrain their awareness to limited aspects of their actions. Similarly, when Ono narrates an episode in which he was confronted with the results of his activities as a police informer, it is debatable whether his attempt to mitigate the brutality of the police is a retrospective fabrication devised to avoid his own responsibility, or whether he actually did disapprove of the treatment of the person he had denounced, distancing himself from his actions and refusing to recognize the abusive treatment as a direct and foreseeable consequence of those actions. The novel's title is based on the literal translation of ukiyo-e, a word referring to the Japanese art of prints. Therefore, it can be read as a printmaker or an artist living in a changing world, given both Ono's limited understanding and the dramatic changes his world, Japan, in the first half of the 20th century, has undergone in his lifetime. The title also refers to an artistic genre. Ono's master is especially interested in depicting scenes from the pleasure district adjacent to the villa in which he and his students live. Ono mentions the ephemeral nature of the floating world that could be experienced during each night. His master experiments with innovative, softer, Western-style painting techniques, rejecting the hard black outlining that was considered more traditional. Under the influence of right-wing political ideas about tradition, Ono becomes estranged from his master and forges his own career. He feels gleeful at the fall of his master's paintings into disfavor during a return to the use of more traditional bold lines in the paintings used for nationalistic posters.
We have come to an end of our video today. We remind you to subscribe to our channel if you have not yet subscribed. We also thank our subscribers for the support you have given us. We kindly request you to like this video. Thank you so much for watching our video up to the end. Let's meet in our next interesting video like this. Goodbye.